Good morning, and thank you for attending Police Headquarters. My name is Constable Carolyn DeClute, and I am here today to introduce Deputy Chief James Raymer, who will announce results of Project Belair.
Good morning. I want to provide an update on the Toronto Police Service investigation that is now complete, and we're in a position to provide a more fulsome accounting of what has occurred. But before I begin, I'd like to take a moment to thank our partners from CBSA for being with us this morning, that as is represented by Director David Gloss. Earlier this year, the Firearms Enforcement Unit, which is a subunit of our Integrated Guns and Gangs Task Force, commenced an investigation into individuals suspected to be involved in street-level sales of illicit guns in the Greater Toronto Area. Through investigation, it became apparent that the guns were being smuggled across the border in vehicles destined for the GTA, destined for the sale to criminals and gang members. Through the collaborative efforts of the TPS, the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms, and Canada Border Services Agency, a vehicle with a lone female occupant was stopped by CBSA officers while trying to enter into Canada at the Peace Bridge in Fort Erie, Ontario, on the evening of October 31st. A search of the vehicle resulted in the seizure of 25 handguns. Each of the 25 handguns had been concealed inside the vehicle's gas tank. The female was taken into custody by CBSA and was held in custody for the Toronto Police Service. Further investigative efforts led to the arrest of 3 additional individuals who are alleged to be the participants of this illegal firearms trafficking operation. All 3 were subsequently located in various parts of the GTA and were taken into custody by our members on November 1st. A number of search warrants were executed on vehicles and addresses linked to these individuals. The items that you see on display today were all seized during the course of Project Belair. I'd like to acknowledge the outstanding efforts of the TPS Firearms Enforcement Unit. These investigations are both labor-intensive and time-intensive and not without substantial risk. Project Belair has resulted in the interception of numerous illicit handguns and ammunition that we believe were destined to be sold and used by criminals and gang members here in the city and throughout the GTA, and they only have one purpose. As a service, we remain committed and vigilant in our efforts to undermine the efforts of criminals who choose to carry guns to be used to kill and maim. I'd like to thank members of the Canada Border Services Agency and the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms for their assistance in what, as you can see, has been a very successful investigation. Project Belair is yet another example of the outstanding results we achieve when combating this type of gun activity through multi-agency collaboration. I will now ask Acting Inspector Don Belanger of the Integrated Gang and Gun Task Force to provide you with specifics on the results of this very successful project. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Good morning. With regard to items seized during the course of Project Belair, a total of 30 handguns, including 25 seized from the vehicle at the Peace Bridge border crossing, 16 overcapacity magazines, making them prohibited devices, 136 rounds of various calibers of ammunition, 166 grams of powder cocaine, 111 grams of crack cocaine, 13 kilograms of marijuana, approximately $45,000 in proceeds of crime. As mentioned, a total of 13 search warrants were executed on vehicles in addresses in Toronto, Brampton, and Ajax. A complete list of charges will be provided to you, but I can summarize as follows. Alan Cunningham, that's AlanCunningham, 52 years, of Brampton, has been charged with multiple offenses in relation to firearms and ammunition trafficking, possession of proceeds of crime, as well as possession of marijuana for the purpose of trafficking. William Datta, that's D-A-T-T-A, 41 years, of Ajax, has been charged with offenses in relation to firearms trafficking, possession of proceeds of crime, and possession of both crack and powder cocaine for the purpose of trafficking. Colin Levy, Levy, 52 years, of Brampton, has been charged with a number of offenses in relation to a loaded, prohibited handgun that was seized from his residence, as well as trafficking marijuana and possession of marijuana for the purpose of trafficking and possession of proceeds of crime. Finally, Rima Mansour, that's R-I-M-A, Mansour, M-A-N-S-O-U-R, 50 years, of Toronto, has been charged with numerous firearms offenses in relation to the seizure of the 25 handguns from her vehicle at the Peace Bridge, in addition to possession of prohibited devices in relation to the overcapacity magazines. I'd like to echo the comments of Deputy Chief Raymer in commending the members of the Firearms Enforcement Unit on an extremely successful investigation, again, the evidence of which is on display before you today. On behalf of the members of the Firearms Enforcement Unit, I'd like to extend our appreciation to members of the CBSA who played an integral role both during the investigation and, of course, at the Peace Bridge border crossing. These 25 handguns, as you can imagine, were so well concealed that it was only through exhaustive efforts that they were eventually located in the gas tank and seized. Assistance in this investigation was also received from the ATF, as mentioned by Deputy Raymer, particularly in Tampa, the Criminal Intelligence Services of Ontario Firearms Analysis and Tracing Enforcement Program, the Toronto Drug Squad, Intelligence Services, the Toronto Police Firearms Investigative Analysis Unit, the Integrated Gun and Gang Task Force street-level enforcement teams and major project section, and 22 Division and 12 Division personnel. Again, as expressed by Deputy Raymer, this was very much a collaborative team effort led by the FEU. I'd like to express my thanks to the members of each of these units. I will now take questions, but I'd just like to point out that we do have Director Gloss here. If anybody has questions specifically related to CBSA operations.
Can you explain more how the guns were being stored in a gas tank of a vehicle that was operational? Were they submerged in the gasoline, or was the vehicle rigged a different way to operate?
No, the handguns were actually in the gas tank and immersed in gasoline. Each gun had been individually packaged in plastic, I guess in an effort to protect them from the gasoline.
Inspector, have you ever seen that before? I guess I've got as well, but
Right, for me, this is absolutely a first.
Can you just speak to how big of a dent you think this will make in smuggling handguns and the guns that reach Toronto?
I think we've effectively dismantled one firearm importation ring. I'm confident in that, and that always has a positive impact on community safety. As the deputy mentioned, every one of these guns there's one purpose for it, and they're to be sold to the criminal element in Toronto and the GTA. So anytime we can prevent that, especially to this degree, it's obviously a good day for us.
Where did these handguns come from?
These handguns are in the process of being traced. I can tell you that they do have serial numbers on them still. They haven't been removed, with the exception of one. And they are being traced. So the traces that we have so far link them to the state of Florida and the state of Georgia.
Is this investigation, these seizures, is this connected to any specific criminal organization, or are these kind of for whoever's looking to buy?
Not linked to any specific street gang. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you see the ages of the accused. These aren't young people. These are people in their 40s and 50s who are funneling guns to criminal street gangs.
can you take us through and just tell us what some of the guns are?
They're all, well, as you can see, they're all handguns. Some are prohibited handguns, some are restricted handguns. In terms of getting into the specifics about...
Because I didn't mean to do that. Are these guns that people down in Georgia and Florida could go in and buy, and that's what they're for?
That's right.
And so you suspect that somebody's bought them legally and then...
Right. So yes. So they're I don't want to say too much because there is continuing investigation in the U.S., but what we're alleging is that lawful gun owners in the States are purchasing handguns for maybe $300 to $500, having them smuggled across the border, and then selling them here. These guns that you see before you could sell from anywhere between, say, $2,000 to $5,000 on the streets of Toronto.
Can you speak to whether the woman was already flagged by police before reaching the border? Is that how border officers knew to stop her?
Yeah, without getting into too much detail, it was through collaboration with our investigators, with CBSA, and with the ATF.
And this looks like a job well done by the team. I don't know if the cuts to guns and gangs is still happening. If it is, how do you expect to keep up with work like this?
There's no cuts to guns and gangs. We remain vigilant and committed, and we have multiple investigations on the go, and you're seeing the results of it today.
Do you guys have the tools that you need to go after these sellers in the United States who are making a profit off of selling these guns on the black market in Toronto?
Yeah, well, I mean, that comes down to the collaboration, right? So our Firearms Enforcement Unit is in ongoing contact with CBSA. We have great relationships with the ATF, and absolutely, we're working together on a weekly basis.
But it would be prosecutors in the U.S. who would be going after them.
That's right. That's right.
Was there any involvement from the provincial firearms enforcement? And if the arrest took place in Fort Erie, why is this Toronto involvement and not?
Because it originated as a Toronto police investigation.
So it's Toronto intelligence that led to this.
That's correct.
I don't know if you can answer this question or not, but I know, previously large drug seizures, marijuana, the drugs would be burned later on. Now that marijuana is legal, what would happen to these kinds of seizures? What would happen to marijuana?
Well, I mean, this quantity of marijuana is still not legal. And obviously, when you get into quantities of this size, they're possessing it for the purpose of trafficking it. And that's still just as illegal as it was before.
Yeah, but I mean, after the police have seized it, does it get burned later on, or do you turn it over to the government, or how does that work?
It eventually gets destroyed. Yeah.
What do you have to do to access the gas tank? I know there was a story out a couple days ago about having actually to go to a mechanic shop or something like that. Can you or somebody from the CBSA comment on that?
I can comment it just based on information I received from my people who were present in Fort Erie at the time. The gas tank had to be essentially taken apart and made into two pieces. And once it was taken apart and essentially the lid taken off, there you could see all the guns inside of it.
Did the people have any affiliation with any specific criminal organization to get them on your radar in the first place?
I'm not going to comment on that.
Did the
You made
woman
these-
who was smuggling the guns over the border, is she known to police?
No, not prior to this.
You made these arrests. Is it giving you some decent leads on who their clients might have been arrested?
That part of the investigation is ongoing.
How many times do you believe that this woman has done this, smuggled these guns like these over the border in a gas tank?
I don't know, but what I can tell you is that each gun was, like I said earlier, individually packaged, and it appeared that there was an attempt to vacuum seal them. Every single one of these guns ended up doused in gasoline, so they did a very poor job of sealing them, which leads me to conclude that perhaps this may have been the first time they tried this, but that is speculation on my part.
Did you recover all the drugs once you served warrants on the 3 males that were arrested in Toronto?
That's correct.
Would you characterize them as arms dealers or drug dealers or both?
Both.
So essentially they were using some of these as protection or enforcement for their drug business.
They could have been using them for protection, but it's our allegation that they were being brought in for the main purpose of being sold to profit off sales of guns. Any other questions?
What kind of vehicle it was? We've heard of these coming in with commercial trucks or passenger vehicles.
Yeah, it appeared in the original news story that was out. It was a Nissan Rogue.
Was Was that vehicle a rental car?
It was.
Is there anything being done in terms of, targeting these rental companies that may be renting the cars to? And was the rental car from Canada or from?
It was rented here in Toronto, and I won't comment on the first question.
Any other questions?
You know, I was hoping that maybe CBSA and also Deputy Raymer could come up and we could ask them a couple of things. Maybe together is fine with me. I mean, I know CBSA can't say too much, but it really help us is, this is your expertise at the border and this is what you do. So maybe you can sort of put some perspective for us about, the gas tank part of it, that something you've seen before or not. How did you know what to do?
So I can't get into the operational aspects of the operation, but we've seen guns hidden all over the place. So I'm not sure if gas tank is the first time. It's personally the first time I've seen it, but I'm sure in the history of the CBSA we've seen this before. Most of the work that we do, as mentioned by the deputy and TPS here, is the partnerships, the intelligence that we share with our Canadian partners and our American partners as well, which led to the seizure. As far as the impact, I mean, you see in front of you, right, 25 guns taken off the street, so that was a big success in our books. But as far as, in the past, have we seen this? Not sure.
You haven't personally seen a gun in a gas tank yourself, and you've been...
Personally, I have not, no. But I've had this job for a year, so a lot happens in a year, but not this one yet.
So that obviously, now that it's happened, you probably learn every day.
Exactly, yeah.
Can you give us an idea how often this happens? I mean, we're hearing about it today. It's linked to Toronto Police, but I'm sure this happens possibly linked to other police services, but we're not, and many that we don't learn about.
Mm-hmm. How often we seize, or how often actually gets smuggled
How often do you seize,
through?
and how often do you suspect that it happens without seizures?
With this amount, it's quite rare. Like 25 guns at once is quite rare. We do see it every single day, like firearms being smuggled into Canada. Mostly it's tourists that forget to declare. But the organized crime or the criminal element smuggling, probably once a month at least. But depending on the mode of transportation, depending on where. We've had some good success recently. I'm not going to get into numbers, but there's been 2 or 3 really good seizures in the last 2 or 3 months related to the GTA.
We'll take one more question.
I just said to Deputy Raymer, I know this upsets you when you see this kind of thing, and it's been an upsetting year. When we were here last time for, was it Traveler? Project Traveler?
Patton.
Or was it, what was the one that we were here last time for?
Patton.
Yeah, and you vowed there that you were going to step up and intelligence-wise and otherwise to do it. And I think the public is wondering when they see this, and it doesn't seem to have a direct connection to what we like to stereotype as a street gang. And we see some other stories in Peel and in Durham of families and moms and sons and things like that. I wonder if you could talk about that there's seems to be 2 things that allure to go into these kinds of money games, and also that you're now on top of it a lot more than responding, almost like the space program. You have to respond to the realities. Those 2 things.
I'm not sure about your first question, Joe, but what I would say to you is that for the last number of years, the Integrated Gun and Gang Task Force and specifically the Firearms Enforcement Unit has been actively doing this work and has been very successful in it, and they continue to do it. Are we seeing that there's more and more guns being done? I think that is the case. We're seeing more and more guns being used in the city. There's more and more demand for them, and as a result, you're seeing our officers locate more.
And it's not just people that are hardened criminals. It sounds like there's people that are doing this, trying to do this and trying to get it by. I'm not saying that you're not tipping your hand that this is connected to crime must be some way, but, you know, we're dealing with a woman driving the car, a rental car, and as I said, there's a mom and son, different things like that we're starting to see that we've never seen before.
Well, it's as Don said, it's lucrative, and there's a demand. Okay, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
That concludes today's conference. Thank you for attending.